Hello and welcome back to Resident Evil Deep Dive here on Dueling Gaming, where I will be consuming as much Resident Evil content as I can every single day of October. Today we're talking about the Resident Evil 3 remake on PS5. Let's get started. Having just gotten off the heels of having an amazing time in RE2 Remake, I was super hyped to get into this one. Needless to say, it didn't let down. I had no idea that this was a quasi-prequel to 2, although by the end of the story, they're running parallel. I found it super interesting to see stuff in this game that would become relevant in 2, like when Carlos blows up the shower wall, which makes the steam block the way, an obstacle that you had to deal with back in 2. The whole police station thing for me was awesome, because I literally played 2 the day before this, and still had everything fresh in regards to the map in my head. This made it so the revisit in this game was a breeze for me to get through, which isn't really anything to do with the quality of the game and more just a side anecdote. It was really cool to be able to see what happens to Jill after the first game, and I was surprised that there were no second character campaign like this series is usually known for. I suppose you play as Carlos often enough that a second campaign wasn't really needed, but still interesting that it's not here. Jill herself is a good enough character, but I personally prefer Leon instead. There wasn't anything particularly wrong with Jill, I just think the writers attempted to write a strong character lead, and then fell into the pitfall I find a lot of female protagonists do, which is that the entire character's personality boils down to the fact that she's headstrong and thinks she can accomplish everything without help. Not to say men characters don't have this either, but I feel like its one-note personality ends up being given to the women characters more than anything. That aside though, I felt like the dynamic given to Carlos and Jill was really good, because by the point in the hospital you can really feel how much he cares for her. Aside from our hero characters, obviously on the enemy side we have the namesake of this game, Nemesis. In a lot of ways, he's just a new version of Mr. X from the last game. However, at least in my opinion, Nemesis isn't even remotely scary or overbearing like the Tyrant was, more just a giant annoyance. Especially now, instead of being a constant entity roaming around any corner, Nemesis has these annoying ass moves like the one where he grabs you with his parasite tongue that puts you on the ground for way too long. Not to mention the rocket launcher and the fact that he is way too fast and deals way too much damage, making the many sections he's in super tedious to get through, especially if other zombies are around. Besides Nemesis, I really liked the hunters that were introduced in this game. They got a few really good jump scares for me in the hospital, especially in the room with the two of them right before getting the cassette tape. These really added to the atmosphere of this area really well. Speaking of atmosphere, although I don't feel like this game was as thorough about its theming as 2 was, there are still some parts that are super eye-catching. My favorite was downtown, which honestly, I would have been able to sit there and stare at the broken down street, laced with neon signs of the stores all day if it weren't for the rockets getting launched in my face. The hospital is the other major one that was amazing. I loved the set of files that was nurses' journals, where it had a really grim and very well written viewpoint of the beginning of the virus from the eyes of a nurse in a hospital, which honestly does an amazing job at world building. The writing overall here was great. The ties to both the first and second game were integrated super well, and the story moved at a super fast pace. So much so that it felt like this game was over before it even started, but not in any kind of bad way. It just took me by surprise. I feel like if this game was any longer, it wouldn't be as strong. I'm always a firm believer in quality over quantity, which applies especially to the amount of hours a video game takes. Overall, Resident Evil 3 was a solid time. I had a lot of fun with the character's world and story, even if Nemesis was a letdown. I'd say of these 2 remakes and games as a whole, I definitely prefer 2, but 3 is nothing to be mad at either. What do you think of RE3 Remake? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe while you're down there. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow.